What if everything you've been told about reality is incomplete? What if a forgotten figure from ancient Egypt held the key to immortality, the nature of consciousness, and the truth about our universe? His name was Thoth, not just a god, but a force, a cosmic librarian, a builder of time, and possibly your spiritual ancestor. But why was his knowledge hidden? Why are his teachings scattered across ancient temples, mystery schools, and forbidden texts? And more importantly, what happens when you finally remember what was deliberately erased? Before the first temple rose from desert sands, before the first word was carved into stone, there was Thoth. He wasn't born like the other gods. He didn't emerge from myth or lineage. Thoth manifested, a consciousness that simply was, eternal, silent, watching, recording. The Egyptians called him Jehuti, not just a deity, but a presence, a stabilizing force that kept the cosmos from collapsing into chaos. He didn't rule like Ra or war like Set. He balanced, he observed, he measured. The stars moved, the moon shifted, the Nile flooded, because Thoth said it was time. To the priests, he was the scribe of the gods, the master of time, the keeper of law. But to those who truly understood, he was something more, a bridge between thought and form, the divine architect of consciousness itself. Imagine a being that knew how the universe worked, not because he studied it, but because he wrote its laws. He didn't worship the divine, he defined it, not through power, but through understanding. Thoth's presence can't be reduced to stories etched on temple walls. He was behind the stories, behind the creation of writing, behind the concept of number, behind the very idea of truth. Where others saw gods of war or fertility, Thoth was something harder to grasp. He was order through knowledge, reality through rhythm, and unlike other gods bound by civilization and time, Thoth was different. His image changed. His name shifted. But he always remained. Appearing in Egypt, then in Greece, then again in esoteric texts scattered across centuries. A god, a man, a mystery, a force. He is said to have existed before creation and to endure beyond the end, present at the moment the universe exhaled into being, whispering the formulas that made existence possible. Thoth was not merely the god of wisdom, he was wisdom. And in every age, in every civilization that remembered even a fragment of his truth, seekers arose, those drawn to him not by worship, but by knowing, a knowing that their consciousness was not a prison, but a tool, a map, a key, and that somewhere, hidden between thought and reality, Thoth was still writing. If gods were warriors and kings, Thoth was the archivist of the cosmos, a being who didn't fight to rule, but watched to remember. The ancients believed that every event, every breath of creation, every sin, secret, and spark of divine inspiration was recorded, not on scrolls or in books, but in a living field of memory, and Thoth was its custodian. To understand Thoth is to understand the concept of divine memory. He didn't simply observe the world, he preserved it. Every cycle of the moon, every word spoken by gods and mortals, every thought formed in the human mind was, in myth, said to be written down by Thoth's hand. Not for judgment, not for punishment, but for balance. He was the scribe who stood beside Maat, the goddess of truth, during the weighing of the heart ceremony. As the soul stood trembling before the throne of Osiris, it was Thoth who recorded the verdict. He did not sway the scales. He did not interfere. He simply wrote the truth. But that truth was not always for everyone. Hidden in his libraries were not only the past and present, but the unseen structure of the future, laws not yet discovered, sciences not yet born. Thoth didn't just record time. He measured it, aligned it, crafted it. He mapped the movement of the stars, the shape of sacred geometry, and the harmonics of sound and spirit. He wasn't merely cataloguing reality, he was curating it. In esoteric traditions, Thoth's role as divine librarian goes far beyond mythology. Some believe that he encoded the architecture of the universe into sacred texts, so advanced that reading them altered the reader's consciousness permanently. But access was never free. His knowledge, the kind that could collapse empires or elevate a soul beyond death, was hidden, protected, sealed away in layers of symbol and silence. He was not a god of answers. He was a god of questions, because questions lead the worthy to revelation. To seek Thoth was to confront the deepest mystery of all. What if knowledge was not given, but remembered? And what if everything you've ever known was written long ago, by a being who never forgets? In the beginning, there was vibration, and from vibration came sound, and from sound, Thoth shaped the first word. But this was no ordinary word. It was the first act of creation. Thoth didn't invent language to communicate with humans. He gave language to the universe so it could communicate with itself. Words weren't just tools, they were forces. The very symbols we use to think, to describe, to define, were his invention. To Thoth, letters were sacred shapes, sounds were frequencies with purpose, speech was spellcraft. The Egyptians credited him with inventing writing, hieroglyphs that weren't just pictures, but portals. Each symbol held layers of meaning, physical, mental, spiritual. When strung together, they didn't just convey meaning, they created it. His script didn't tell stories, it built realities. This is why Thoth was known as the tongue of the gods. He gave form to the formless, thought to the unspoken, structure to the chaos. But the true mystery. He understood that language didn't just reflect consciousness, it programmed it. When you describe something, when you name it, you bind it in perception, and perception shapes reality. Thoth's language was not just descriptive, it was constructive. It was the underlying code of consciousness itself. This is why his writings, especially the fabled emerald tablets, were said to contain more than wisdom. They were said to hold power. Read by the wrong soul, they could unmake sanity. But to the one who was ready, they offered nothing less than transformation. Today, we speak without awareness. We use words carelessly. But in the ancient world, every utterance carried weight. The spoken word was an act of creation, a contract with the unseen. Thoth taught that if you mastered language, not just outer language, but the inner voice, you could command reality. Change your inner dialogue, and the universe responds. This is why silence was also sacred to Thoth, because only from silence can the true word emerge. So next time you speak, next time you name something, define something, believe something, ask yourself, whose language are you using? And what reality are you unconsciously calling into existence? Because Thoth's greatest secret wasn't that language shaped the world. It was that you were taught to forget the language that shapes you. In the stillness between light and shadow, there stood Thoth. He was never a god of extremes. He didn't crave devotion, demand blood, or conquer cities. His power lay in balance, in the invisible fulcrum that held all things steady, and at the heart of that balance was Ma'at. Ma'at wasn't just a goddess, she was order itself, the cosmic law that ensured the stars would return, that truth would triumph over illusion, and that justice, divine justice, was always present, even when unseen. Thoth was her voice, her mind, her hands. When the universe tilted too far, it was Thoth who corrected it. In Egyptian myth, the most sacred moment came after death, when the soul faced judgment. The heart of the deceased was weighed against a single feather, the symbol of Ma'at. If the heart was heavier, burdened by lies, hate, or imbalance, it was devoured. If it was lighter, the soul passed on. But it was Thoth who stood at the scales, Thoth who measured, Thoth who wrote, not to condemn, not to forgive, but to witness. Because witnessing, in its purest form, brings truth. Thoth didn't punish chaos. He understood it. He knew that every universe requires tension, light and dark, masculine and feminine, action and stillness. The problem wasn't duality. The danger came when balance was lost. He taught that harmony wasn't passive, it had to be maintained. Every thought you think, every choice you make, tilts your personal scale. And the scale isn't measured in morality, but in resonance. Are your thoughts aligned with truth? Are your actions matching your inner voice? That was the path of Ma'at. Thoth was the master of this alignment, not because he controlled it, but because he embodied it. His very presence reminded the world of its center, and in our time, when extremes dominate and polarization reigns, his wisdom whispers again. The universe doesn't reward noise, it rewards balance. So if you feel the world spinning too fast, if your soul feels uncentered, ask, where am I out of rhythm? Where have I let the pendulum swing too far? Because Ma'at is not a myth, it is a principle, and Thoth is still keeping score. What if reality wasn't random? What if it followed rules, precise, invisible rules, written not in stone, but in spirit? Thoth didn't just document these laws, he understood them. He didn't theorize about existence. He moved through it with the precision of a cosmic engineer, aware that everything, light, matter, thought, and time, follows sacred principles. These laws weren't physical, they were energetic, hidden beneath the surface of creation like the root system beneath a forest. To the unaware, they seem like coincidence or mystery. But to the initiated, to those who followed Thoth's path, these were laws as binding as gravity, vibration, rhythm, polarity, correspondence, cause and effect. These weren't abstract ideas, they were the blueprint, the scaffolding of the universe. In mystery schools of ancient Egypt, these teachings were passed on in whispers. Initiates would spend years in silence before they were taught even a single one. Because these laws didn't just describe the world, they gave you the power to influence it, and that was dangerous. This is why Thoth's wisdom was never made public, because when misunderstood, these laws could destroy. But when mastered, they offered liberation unlike anything the world has known. Take rhythm, the understanding that all things rise and fall, that every expansion contracts, that every season returns. To fight the flow is to suffer. To ride it is to thrive. Or polarity, the knowledge that opposites are simply extremes of the same thing, light and dark, good and evil, heat and cold. Once you understand that, you stop reacting. You start transcending. These were not just philosophies, they were keys. But Thoth never handed these keys to just anyone. He knew the risk of power in unprepared hands. That's why his teachings were hidden in layers, myths for the many, metaphors for the curious, and codes for the initiated. Today, remnants of these laws remain in the Hermetic texts and echoed through spiritual traditions across the world. But the full understanding, the pure transmission, that has always been protected. So, if you've ever felt like the universe is speaking a language just beyond your comprehension, if patterns haunt you, if synchronicities whisper to you, it's because Thoth's laws are still in effect, unseen, unbreakable, waiting for you to remember. They were not made of gold, not of papyrus or stone. They were made of something no fire could burn, something no time could erode, the emerald tablets. To speak their name is to summon 1,000 years of secrecy. According to legend, they were inscribed by Thoth himself, not as a record of history, but as a manual for eternity. These were not books to be read. They were technologies, consciousness codes, spiritual blueprints etched in emerald-colored crystal, rumored to be crafted from a material unknown to this world. No one knows where they came from. No one knows how they survive. But they are said to contain the purest distillation of Thoth's knowledge, the very core of Hermetic wisdom, alchemical transformation, and the laws that govern reality. And here's the paradox. The tablets were said to be indestructible, but they were also hidden, buried beneath the sands, locked beneath pyramids, guarded by those who understood that such power could never be left in careless hands. Because these weren't dusty scrolls or mythic scripture, they were living frequencies. Some say you don't even need to read them. Just to be near them, just to hold their image in your mind, is to trigger a resonance within the soul. They weren't meant for the masses. They were meant for the awakened, those ready to see past illusion, those willing to dissolve the false walls between thought and form, death and life, self and cosmos. Their content? Only fragments are known. Whispers of as above, so below. Mentions of a menti, the underworld between lives. Hints at the illusion of time, the path of ascension, and the method by which consciousness creates reality. But those who have truly read them, if they exist, never speak of it publicly. Because to decode them is not just to gain knowledge, it is to risk everything you once believed about the nature of existence. And yet, they have always called, to the seeker, the misfit, the spiritual rebel who knows, deep down, that something more is waiting to be remembered. And when that soul is ready, the tablets appear. 4 simple words, as above, so below. To the untrained ear, it sounds poetic, maybe even vague, but to Thoth and the initiates of the ancient mystery schools, this phrase was the equation of existence. It is not metaphor, it is law. As above, so below, as within, so without. These words weren't meant to inspire, they were meant to instruct. They reveal a truth most overlook, that the macrocosm and microcosm are reflections of one another. The universe is not something outside of us. It is mirrored within. The stars in the sky are not separate from the neurons in your brain. The spirals of galaxies mimic the spirals of DNA. The structure of your thoughts echoes the structure of the cosmos. And here's the secret Thoth embedded in this law. You are not just affected by reality, you are affecting it. Your internal world is not passive, it's active. Your thoughts, emotions, and beliefs form a vibrational field that radiates outward. That field does not vanish into the void, it creates. When you hold fear, the world seems dangerous. When you radiate clarity, life responds with opportunity. When you shift your inner vibration, reality reshapes itself to match. This is the feedback loop Thoth revealed, a loop that few dare to control. And this is why his teachings were hidden, because a population that understands their inner world shapes the outer would no longer be controllable. No temples needed, no rulers obeyed, no dogma required. But Thoth didn't just leave this truth behind as a statement, he built civilizations on it. The temples of Egypt, the pyramids, the sacred geometries, they were physical manifestations of the inner world, designed to mirror the heavens, to align the soul with the cosmos, because when inner and outer match, when above and below are one, you unlock the path of ascension. This law wasn't just for priests and prophets, it was for you. So if you want to change your life, change your thoughts. If you want to change the world, begin within. The universe is a mirror, and Thoth left the code. Long before we had hard drives or data centers, the ancients believed that every thought, every soul, every action, past, present, or future, was recorded. Not on paper, not in stone, but in a living, breathing field of memory. They called it the Akashic Records, and Thoth was its keeper. To the ancient Egyptians, this wasn't a metaphor. The Akashic field, also known as the Halls of Amenti, was a literal realm, a space beyond the veil of ordinary perception where the story of existence was written in light. Not just the deeds of kings and empires, but your inner world, your fears, your growth, your intent. Thoth was said to have full access to this realm, not just as a visitor, but as its architect. This was the true power behind his title as the Scribe of the Gods. He didn't merely record history, he observed the core encoding of the universe itself. Every vibration of energy, every shift in awareness, it all echoed into the Akashic field, and Thoth wrote it into order. And here's where the mystery deepens. According to the Emerald Tablets, this vast library isn't sealed away in the stars or buried beneath the earth. It exists within you. Accessing the Akashic field isn't about traveling outward, it's about tuning inward. Through altered states of consciousness, deep meditation, lucid dreaming, spiritual discipline, you can enter the halls of Amenti. And once there, the illusion of time dissolves. You can witness your past lives, glimpse future possibilities, remember forgotten truths your soul has carried for lifetimes. This is why Thoth didn't value blind faith. He valued inner knowing, because the Akashic field doesn't require belief. It requires alignment, frequency. Only those who have purified their thoughts, who have balanced their inner and outer worlds, can enter with clarity. Those who are not ready? They see only chaos. In every age, mystics and sages have whispered about this place. Some called it the Book of Life, others, the universal mind, but they were all speaking of the same thing, the realm of remembrance, and the gatekeeper, the master of entries and exits, was always the same, Thoth, because the truth isn't hidden from you. It's hidden within you. To Thoth, the material world was just one page in a book of many. And most of us have been reading only that single page, confusing it for the whole story. But the truth? There are other pages, other layers, other worlds. Thoth taught that reality is multidimensional, not theory, not metaphor. Fact. What we call reality is just one plane, dense, physical, slow, but surrounding it, within it, and beyond it are other planes of existence, energetic, mental, astral, etheric, and divine. He called them the Great Planes, each with its own laws, its own beings, and its own version of time. We live on the lowest rung of the ladder, but we are not limited to it. According to Thoth, our consciousness can travel these planes just as easily as light moves through glass. The body belongs to one world, the mind to another, the soul to all. And here lies the deeper mystery. These planes aren't up there in the sky or in some distant dimension. They're interwoven with this one, existing right here, right now, only vibrating at higher frequencies. A thought? That's an event in the mental plane. An intuition? That's your astral self whispering through the veil, a dream that feels more real than waking life. You were there, on another level of being. This understanding was central to Thoth's teachings. He didn't just want to reveal the architecture of the cosmos. He wanted you to navigate it, to move between planes consciously, to stop identifying with only the physical, to remember that you are not just a body with a soul, you are a soul using a body. And when you recognize that, the illusion of separation begins to dissolve. Suddenly, healing becomes more than physical, it becomes energetic. Prayer becomes more than words, it becomes vibration. Death becomes more than loss, it becomes transition. Thoth was a master of these realms. That's why he was depicted as an ibis, an animal believed to walk between land and sky, a messenger, a traveller, a being unbound by one domain. He taught that consciousness isn't limited by matter. It uses matter, temporarily, purposefully. But when you forget your multidimensional nature, you become trapped in illusion. And Thoth's greatest gift was the reminder that you were never meant to stay on just one page. We treat time like a ruler, something straight, fixed and absolute. Past behind us, future ahead, the present, slipping through our fingers. But Thoth saw time differently. To him, time wasn't linear. It was cyclical, layered, alive. He taught that time is not something we move through, but something we generate through perception. Like a dream, it feels solid while we're in it. But when we wake up, when we raise our consciousness, we realize it was always more fluid than we imagined. In the Emerald Tablets, Thoth describes traveling backward and forward through the ages. He speaks of standing outside the flow of time, watching civilizations rise and fall like waves, not as a ghost, but as a fully conscious being who had mastered the rhythm of the ages. And here's the secret. He wasn't gifted this ability. He learned it. He studied the laws of vibration and rhythm so completely that he could step in and out of time like a door. He taught that time was not universal but local, bound to a specific frequency. And if you change your frequency, your level of consciousness, you can change your position in time. This is why some dreams feel like hours but take minutes, why déjà vu strikes without warning, why some memories feel like they've happened before or are yet to happen. You're touching layers. You're feeling the echo of your own multidimensional self, brushing against timelines not yet lived or long since left behind. Thoth called this mastering the illusion because he didn't deny time existed, he simply refused to be ruled by it. And that was the essence of his path. Freedom. Freedom from the illusion of limitation. Freedom from the prison of the clock. Freedom from believing that your life is confined to a straight path, moving forward toward some inevitable end. He taught that everything you've ever been, everything you might become, exists right now, in the eternal present. Not out there, but in you. So if you feel trapped by the past, or fearful of the future, remember this. Thoth did not fear time, because he remembered how to move beyond it. Most gods have an ending. They fade with their civilizations. Their temples crumble. Their names are whispered only in myth. But not Thoth. Thoth never died, because Thoth was never fully born. He didn't enter the world the way others did. Through myth, through legend, through worship, he appeared, self-created, consciousness in motion, a presence that slipped between lifetimes not bound by flesh or form. In the oldest Egyptian texts, Thoth is described not as a deity of blood and lineage, but as timeless. He was there at the beginning of creation, assisting Ra, measuring the sky, writing the laws, guiding the first breath of the universe itself. But unlike other gods, he wasn't confined to one era or one culture. His name changed, his face shifted, but his essence remained. Some say he retreated to the halls of Amenti, a hidden dimension beneath the earth, where ascended masters sleep between incarnations, waking only when the world is ready. Others claim he simply walked away, leaving the physical world behind, stepping fully into the higher planes. But many believe he returned, not as a god this time, but as a man, a sage, a teacher cloaked in mortal flesh, his spirit reappearing under different names, in different places, always carrying the same vibration, the same voice of remembrance. Every age has its awakeners, figures who appear just when the darkness thickens. They speak truth too deep for doctrine. They shatter illusions with a single sentence, and they seem strangely familiar. Some called him Hermes Trismegistus, others Enoch, the man who walked with God and never tasted death. Some even point to anonymous prophets, ancient philosophers, and modern mystics who carried whispers of the same message. You are more than what you believe. These weren't coincidences. They were echoes. Thoth was not a figure of the past. He was, and is, a force woven through time, a current of consciousness that re-emerges whenever humanity forgets its power. And now, as the veil begins to thin once more, the question arises, what if Thoth didn't leave? What if he's simply waiting for you to remember who you are? When the Greeks came to Egypt, they were stunned. The temples, the mathematics, the mysteries, so advanced, so ancient, they couldn't believe such knowledge came from mortal minds. So they did what humans often do when faced with something divine. They gave it a name they could understand, Hermes. But this wasn't the trickster messenger god of Mount Olympus. This was something more, something older, something eternal. They called him Hermes Trismegistus, meaning Hermes the thrice great. And who was this thrice great sage? He was Thoth, reborn. To the initiated, this wasn't a theory. It was truth. The Greeks recognized that the Egyptian god of wisdom, writing, and time was the very same force they saw in Hermes, a divine communicator, a master of knowledge, a guide between realms. But the Trismegistus part, that was the clue. He was called thrice great because he was master of three worlds, the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. In other words, he had fully integrated all levels of being. He wasn't just a god, he was a human who had remembered his godhood, a blueprint for what humanity could become. Under this new name, Thoth's teachings began to spread again, hidden in the form of Hermeticism. These texts weren't myths, they were instruction manuals, describing the laws of vibration, polarity, rhythm, and the secrets of divine creation. They were written in riddles, protected by metaphor, decoded only by the worthy. And unlike many ancient philosophies, Hermetic wisdom didn't demand belief. It asked for understanding. It didn't preach morality. It offered mechanics, how reality works, and how you, as a conscious being, can work with it. The transformation from Thoth to Hermes wasn't just a shift in name, it was a strategy, a rebirth, a way to preserve ancient truths in a new language for a new world. Because every time the world forgets, Thoth returns, in a different form, under a different name, always carrying the same fire. And when Hermes Trismegistus appeared, he wasn't offering religion. He was offering remembrance, the reminder that you too are part of the divine, that you too can master the three worlds. And that godhood was never something you had to earn. It was something you only had to remember. Tucked away in dusty libraries, secret shelves, and forbidden archives, lies one of the most profound collections of spiritual teachings ever written, the Hermetic corpus. It doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't command worship. It whispers, quietly, powerfully, to those ready to listen. The Hermetic corpus is not a single book, but a collection of sacred writings attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, the Greek incarnation of Thoth. These texts were never meant for the masses. They weren't inscribed for entertainment or control. They were encoded for transformation. But not just spiritual transformation. Total transformation. Inside the Hermetic texts lie the core principles that echo through every true mystery school. The universe is mental. All is vibration. As above, so below. Polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, gender. All are laws, not concepts. Thoth didn't write poetry. He mapped reality. The Hermetic corpus is that map. But here's the catch. You can't read it like a modern book. The deeper truths are hidden in layers. What looks like allegory is actually instruction. What sounds like myth is a metaphor for energy. What seems abstract becomes alive when felt rather than studied. Initiates of the ancient world didn't just read these texts. They lived them. They meditated on them for months, reflected on a single phrase for years, because every sentence was a doorway, a cipher, a spell. Take the Kybalion, one of the modern Hermetic texts inspired by this tradition. It breaks down the 7 laws of the universe, laws that align perfectly with quantum physics, neuroplasticity, and consciousness studies today. These weren't mystic guesses. They were the result of direct experience with the structure of the cosmos. But why is this knowledge hidden? Because applied Hermetic wisdom threatens all systems of control. It teaches that you are not subject to fate, not bound by dogma, not limited by form. It shows you how to shape reality with thought, how to ascend through awareness, and how to awaken without permission. This is why the Hermetic corpus has been guarded, suppressed, and dismissed. Not because it's irrelevant, but because it's dangerous to those who profit from your ignorance. Thoth never wanted to be worshipped. He wanted to leave behind a guidebook, and it's been hiding in plain sight. For most, death is the end, a full stop, the closing of the book. But to Thoth, it was just a comma, a pause before the next sentence in a much larger story. You see, Thoth didn't just record the secrets of the universe, he lived them. And among those secrets, one teaching stood above all: ascension. Not in the religious sense, not a place you go when you're good enough. Ascension, according to Thoth, was a process, a shift in frequency, a conscious evolution of being. It wasn't about escaping Earth, it was about transcending limitation. In the Emerald Tablets, he writes of rising beyond the form, of shedding the body like a garment and stepping into the higher realms as a fully aware soul. Not just after death, but at will. He speaks of masters who no longer die, who choose when to leave and where to go next. This wasn't fantasy, it was instruction. Thoth described the soul as a traveller, temporarily clothed in flesh, but never confined to it. The goal was never to cling to the body or escape it, but to use it as a tool, a vehicle for experience, a classroom for mastery. And once that mastery is achieved, you ascend, not into clouds, but into clarity, into vibration, into the planes of light where thought creates instantly, where memory expands, where consciousness is no longer limited by gravity or time. This is why Thoth built temples in alignment with the stars, why his teachings were embedded in geometry, in cycles, in sound. Everything he left behind was a map, a set of instructions encoded in myth and structure, pointing the way to higher states of being. But here's the part that changes everything. Ascension isn't reserved for the chosen. It's not a divine lottery. It's a skill, a science, a choice. And it begins not after death, but now, in how you think, in what you believe, in how you remember who you are beneath the illusion of form. Thoth didn't promise heaven. He offered something far more powerful, the blueprint to become more than human while still alive. Every thought you've ever had still exists. It didn't vanish. It didn't fade. It vibrated into the fabric of reality and left a fingerprint. Thoth understood this before neuroscience, before quantum theory, before any modern understanding of consciousness. He taught that thought is not passive. It is active, creative, electric. Every idea, emotion, and belief generates a vibration. And vibration is the true architecture of form. In his teachings, especially those hidden within the Emerald Tablets, Thoth explains that the universe is built on frequency. Every object, every being, every moment has a vibrational signature, and those signatures interact like music. Harmony creates health. Dissonance creates distortion. This is not abstract mysticism. This is spiritual physics. When your thoughts are fearful, chaotic, or filled with doubt, they lower your frequency. When they are clear, focused, and rooted in truth, they raise it. And reality, this fluid, responsive field we live in, shifts to match your dominant vibration. This is why manifestation works, not because of wishful thinking, but because your thought is an energetic command. Thoth knew that words carry vibration, that symbols encode frequency, that thoughts, repeated over time, become the blueprint for your experience. What you think, you become. What you fear, you attract. What you believe, you create. This is why his sacred teachings weren't about worship. They were about awareness, about training the mind not just to react, but to resonate, to vibrate in harmony with your desired reality, to tune your thoughts like an instrument. He taught that there is no external God deciding your fate, no distant force measuring your worth. The true God is your state of consciousness, your vibration in motion. And if you can master that, you can master your life. This is why the ancients chanted, meditated, and spoke in ritual tones, not for performance, but to shape vibration, to create resonance with higher truths. Thoth's message was simple, but powerful. Your thoughts are not meaningless. They are magnetic. They pull experience toward you. So ask yourself, what are you thinking right now? And if your thoughts became form in this very moment, would you be ready to live inside what you just created? Beneath all the noise, beneath all the distractions, beneath every chain that binds the human spirit, there is one force holding it all together. Fear. Thoth called fear the greatest illusion, not because it isn't real to the mind, but because it has no substance. It is a shadow, not a wall, a fog, not a prison. And yet, it is the most effective tool ever used to control consciousness. Think about it. Every system that governs this world, political, religious, social, thrives on fear. Fear of punishment, fear of death, fear of failure, fear of being different. But Thoth knew what few dared to say aloud. Fear is a frequency. It is not just emotional, it is energetic. And when you live in fear, you lower your vibration. You separate from your divine self. You forget your power. You forget that you are not here to survive. You are here to remember. And fear blocks memory. This is why Thoth's teachings were hidden. Not because humanity wasn't intelligent enough, but because it was too conditioned to be afraid. Afraid of inner power, afraid of freedom, afraid of what it means to live without the false comfort of authority. He taught that to overcome fear is not to destroy it, but to understand it, to see it as a signal, not a stop sign, a boundary between the known and the possible. Every time you step toward truth, fear appears. That is its nature. But what happens when you walk through it? You reclaim yourself. This is why Thoth didn't promise safety. He offered clarity. He didn't create followers. He awakened initiates, those willing to dissolve fear and step into the unknown with eyes wide open. Because once you do, nothing can be used against you. Not death, not judgment, not even failure. When you no longer fear, you begin to see. And when you see clearly, you become dangerous to every system built to keep you small. This is the real reason Thoth's wisdom was suppressed. Not because it was false, but because it taught the one truth that ends all control. You are more powerful than your fear. And they never wanted you to know. To most of the world, death is the end. A wall, a silence, a closing chapter. But to Thoth, death was never a wall. It was a door, a shift, a return. He taught that death isn't something to fear, it's something to understand. Because in truth, nothing truly dies. Energy doesn't vanish, consciousness doesn't dissolve, it simply changes form. In the ancient Egyptian belief system, the soul, the Ba, embarked on a journey after death. A sacred passage through the underworld, through judgment, through memory. But these weren't just metaphors. They were maps of what happens when the body is shed. Thoth didn't just describe this process. He guided it. He was there at the weighing of the heart, beside Osiris, recording the fate of each soul. But more than that, he knew how to navigate the layers of the afterlife. He knew how to move between lives, and more importantly, how to do so consciously. The soul, he taught, is not trapped in a single cycle. It reincarnates, yes, but with awareness, it can choose. Choose when to return. Choose how to evolve. Choose whether to remain bound to the physical or ascend beyond it entirely. This is what modern mystics and ancient initiates alike have always whispered, that death is not an ending, it's a transition. And with the right knowledge, with the right vibration, the soul can transcend the lower planes and move into higher realms of light and intelligence. Thoth called this the path of the masters, beings who do not die, but transform, who leave the physical behind not out of decay, but out of design. He wrote of the halls of Amenti, a hidden realm beneath the earth, where such masters rest between incarnations, not in sleep, but in stillness, waiting, watching, returning only when the time is right. And he taught that this path is not just for the gods, it is for you. Because once you understand death, you stop fearing life. Once you see it as a doorway, you stop running from the unknown. You begin to live fully, knowing that nothing can truly be lost. Not your energy, not your mind, not your soul, only your illusion. Most people move through lifetimes like pages in a forgotten book, flipping forward, never looking back. But Thoth was different. He remembered. In ancient myths, reincarnation is often seen as a cycle of forgetting. The soul returns, but the memory doesn't. Lives are lived in isolation, unaware of what came before. But Thoth broke that cycle. He taught that the soul can reincarnate with memory intact. Not just memory of past events, but memory of truth, of who and what you really are. This, he said, is the true path of mastery, not escaping the cycle of rebirth, but awakening within it. Thoth didn't just observe this from afar, he lived it. Ancient texts describe him as having walked among humanity not once, but many times, each time under a new name, in a new form, but always with the same soul. Some say he became Hermes Trismegistus. Others whisper he appeared as Enoch, the sage who was taken by the divine. And still others believe his spirit re-emerged in teachers, visionaries, and mystics throughout the ages. What united these incarnations wasn't fame or power. It was a continuity of awareness. Imagine moving through lifetimes like walking through different rooms in the same house. Each new life offers new lessons, but the soul remains the same. The wisdom builds, the knowledge accumulates, and eventually the soul becomes a guide, not just for itself, but for others. This is what Thoth modelled. He was not bound by time, nor by the amnesia that clouds most human lives. He remembered every life, every lesson, every law, and this remembrance gave him choice. The choice to return or not, the choice to teach or retreat, the choice to become more with each lifetime. This is what he left behind in his teachings, not a call to worship, but a call to remember. He showed that your soul is not lost. It's simply hidden beneath layers of illusion, noise, and forgetfulness. And when you begin to wake up, when you start remembering who you were, you begin becoming who you were always meant to be. Because reincarnation isn't just about coming back, it's about coming back aware. Most people think of alchemy as the quest to turn lead into gold. But Thoth knew better. The true alchemy was never about metal. It was about the soul. Thoth's teachings reveal a hidden truth that echoes across time. Physical alchemy was a symbol. The real transformation, the one the mystery schools guarded for centuries, was the transmutation of consciousness, turning the heavy, dull weight of human limitation into the radiant brilliance of divine awareness. Laid into gold, that was the metaphor, ignorance into wisdom, fear into freedom, ego into essence. This was the sacred work of the initiate, and Thoth was the original alchemist. He taught that every human being is born with a dense spiritual body, cloaked in forgetfulness, ego, and emotional distortion. But through inner discipline, sacred study, and vibrational alignment, this dense form could be purified, refined, elevated. This was not religion, it was not ritual, it was spiritual science. He explained that just as metals could be purified through fire, so too could the soul be elevated through trials. Pain, loss, heartbreak, these were not punishments. They were the heat that softened the inner self, allowing transformation to take place. Thoth understood that true gold, the gold of spiritual mastery, was found within. And the tools of this alchemy weren't furnaces or crucibles. They were silence, intention, meditation, and self-awareness. In his teachings, the philosopher's stone wasn't a rock. It was a state of consciousness, a place within where the physical and spiritual merge, where thought becomes form, and where the soul remembers its divine origin. This is why Thoth was so dangerous to the systems of control. Because once you begin this inner alchemy, you stop needing external permission. You no longer look to priests, politicians, or prophets to tell you who you are. You become your own temple, your own priest, your own philosopher's stone. Thoth didn't leave behind gold coins. He left behind a process, a coded path for those ready to shed what is heavy and remember what is light, because the real alchemy was never about wealth. It was about awakening. Thoth's teachings never truly vanished. They simply went underground. While temples crumbled and empires fell, his wisdom slipped beneath the surface, carried not by priests or kings, but by the initiated. Those few who recognized that truth in the wrong hands could become a weapon. And so, they hid it. Across the centuries, Thoth's knowledge reappeared quietly in secret societies. The mystery schools of Egypt, the Hermetic orders of Greece, the Rosicrucians, the Freemasons, the alchemists of the Renaissance. All of them, in some way, traced their lineage to his original flame. But they didn't just copy his teachings, they protected them. Because Thoth didn't offer beliefs, he offered tools to awaken consciousness, shift reality, and dissolve illusion. But to use them without preparation was dangerous. That's why initiation was essential. Knowledge wasn't given, it was earned. You didn't learn with your mind. You proved yourself through silence, discipline, and inner transformation. Only then could the deeper layers of the teachings be revealed. Even today, whispers of his system remain, in the symbols etched into secret architecture, in the geometric patterns of cathedrals, in the cryptic language of ancient manuscripts, in the quiet rituals practiced behind closed doors. But the question is, why keep it hidden? Because systems of control, whether political, religious, or economic, thrive when people forget who they are. When consciousness is asleep, power is external. But Thoth's wisdom taught the opposite, that all power begins within. This was threatening. If the masses remembered how to shape reality with thought, if they knew death was an illusion, if they realized the divine spark wasn't above, but within, the entire structure of control would collapse. And so, the teachings were buried, layered in metaphor, guarded by secrecy, shared only with those willing to go inward, question everything, and rise above fear. But here's the twist. Thoth never intended his wisdom to remain hidden forever. He knew a time would come when humanity would wake up again, when seekers would rise, when illusion would crack, and when the silence would be broken. That time is now. And the wisdom, it was never lost, just waiting. If Thoth's wisdom could awaken the divine within every human being, then ask yourself, why isn't it taught in schools? Why isn't it in every book, every temple, every home? Because it was never meant to be shared freely, not by those in power. From the moment Thoth's teachings emerged, they threatened the foundation of every external authority. They didn't promote obedience. They didn't offer dogma. They dismantled it. Thoth taught that the gods are not separate from you. That heaven is not a place you beg to reach. That truth is not granted. It's remembered. And what happens to religions when people stop seeking salvation outside themselves? What happens to rulers when the masses realize they are creators, not subjects? The answer is simple. Control collapses. So, over generations, power structures moved in, not to destroy Thoth's teachings, but to distort them, to bury them beneath symbolism, to misinterpret them, to ridicule them. They turned living truths into dead mythology. They labeled mystics as heretics. They reduced alchemy to fairy tales and made initiations seem like madness. The Emerald Tablets, declared myth. The Hermetic laws, dismissed as pseudoscience. Thoth himself, reduced to a forgotten god with a bird's head. And yet, the same institutions that mock these teachings use them. Secret orders within governments, corporations, and elite circles continue to study the Hermetic laws. They understand that reality responds to thought, that fear lowers vibration, that belief shapes outcome. And while the public is fed entertainment and division, the initiated elite quietly shape the world using the very wisdom they claim doesn't exist. Thoth never taught elitism, but his teachings have been used for it, not because of their flaws, but because of their power. And now, as humanity begins to question everything, that power is surfacing again. The veils are thinning, people are waking up, the illusion is weakening. But the question remains, will you believe the stories you've been fed, or will you remember the truths you've always felt? Because Thoth's greatest gift wasn't knowledge, it was the courage to look within. And the moment you do, the world around you begins to shift. There's a quiet shift happening. You can feel it, not in headlines or statistics, but in your soul. A sense that something isn't right, that the story we've been told about reality doesn't add up. This feeling is not confusion, it's awakening. And Thoth knew this moment would come. He wrote not just for his time, but for a future time, our time. A time when the noise would grow so loud, the illusions so dense, that only the brave would look inward for truth. When society would offer endless distractions, yet leave the soul empty. When people would begin to remember, not from textbooks, but from something ancient inside them. That time is now. You're not alone. Around the world, more people are questioning the narrative, looking beyond surface beliefs, sensing a deeper order behind the chaos. It's not rebellion, it's remembrance. A soul-level resonance with teachings that were never meant to be lost, only hidden until the world was ready. Thoth called this era the time of realignment, the return of truth, not as doctrine, but as frequency. And you're feeling it, that pull toward ancient symbols, toward forgotten wisdom, toward books and practices you can't explain your interest in. That's not coincidence, it's activation. It's the part of you that remembers. The eternal part. The divine part. The part that's been through lifetimes, waiting for this very window in time. You are not waking up because something changed around you. You are waking up because something changed within you. This is what the ancients prepared for. This is why Thoth encoded his teachings into myth, architecture, and vibration, because he knew the soul would recognize what the mind had forgotten. So if you felt disconnected from this world, misunderstood, or strangely drawn to what others dismiss, you're not broken. You're ahead. You're here to remember, to realign, and to remind others that there is another way, a higher way. The age of forgetting is fading. The age of remembering has begun. And those who carry the spark of Thoth's wisdom, they're no longer hiding. They're waking up, and they're everywhere. What if the universe doesn't happen to you, but responds through you? Thoth didn't see consciousness as a side effect of biology. He taught that consciousness is the source, the cause, the original creative force. You aren't a human with a soul. You are a soul using a human experience to shape reality. And your consciousness isn't confined to your skull. It stretches beyond your body, vibrating in all directions, interacting with the field of existence itself. Everything you see, feel, and touch is a result of that interaction. This is the foundation of Thoth's wisdom. Reality is mental, not imaginary, mental. It begins in the realm of thought and intention before it ever takes form in the physical. Think of your consciousness as a projector. Your beliefs, your emotions, your mental patterns, they're the real. Whatever film you load into your mind is what you'll see projected into the world around you. This is why Thoth focused so deeply on inner alignment. Because if your mind is filled with fear, doubt, or chaos, the world will mirror that back to you. Not because you're being punished, but because reality is obedient. It gives you exactly what your energy calls for. Change your frequency. Change your world. This is not wishful thinking. It's a law, and it's why every mystical tradition worth its salt echoes the same truth in different forms. You are the creator of your experience, whether knowingly or not. But here's what most forget. Consciousness isn't just about thinking, it's about being. The vibrational state you hold, the awareness you cultivate, the presence you embody. Thoth didn't want followers, he wanted creators. He left behind instructions not for worship, but for activation. Because once you understand your consciousness creates, you stop reacting, you start choosing, you stop asking for permission, you start shaping reality from the inside out. The secret was never buried. It's been alive in your every thought, every moment, every breath. You are not a victim of the world. You are the architect, and the world has been waiting for you to remember that. We are born into a cycle, not just of life and death, but of forgetting. From the moment you take your first breath, the world begins to tell you what you are, that you are small, that you are separate, that reality is something to endure, not something you create. This is the illusion Thoth came to shatter. He taught that humanity is trapped not by physical chains, but by mental loops, stories, programs, patterns handed down by society, religion, and culture, so deeply embedded we mistake them for truth. You wake up, you work, you obey, you fear, you forget, and then you do it again. But Thoth showed there's another path, a way to exit the cycle, not through death, but through awareness. He called it awakening. Not a flash of light or divine miracle, but a steady, conscious process of peeling away the lies, of remembering your own power, of recognizing that you are not a product of the system. You are a participant in your own creation. Breaking the cycle means questioning everything you've been taught. Who told you what was possible? Who told you how the world works? Who benefits when you doubt your own power? This is why Thoth's teachings were hidden, not because they were too complex, but because they were too liberating. Because once you realize you are not a servant of reality, but its architect, the systems that rely on your obedience begin to crumble. And here's the key. The cycle doesn't break with knowledge alone. It breaks with choice. Every time you choose love over fear, you shift timelines. Every time you choose intuition over programming, you reclaim your path. Every time you act with consciousness instead of reaction, the loop begins to fray. Thoth didn't preach escape. He taught integration. The goal is not to abandon this world, but to transform it, to bring divine memory into human form, to walk as a soul, fully awake in a sleeping world. That's what it means to break the cycle, not to run from life, but to finally live it as the being you were always meant to be. Thoth was never confined to one world. He walked between them, physical and non-physical, seen and unseen, earth and sky. He was the messenger, the mediator, the bridge. Depicted with the head of an ibis, an animal known for traversing both land and water, Thoth symbolized the sacred ability to move between realms. But this wasn't just mythic symbolism. It was a spiritual instruction. Thoth taught that reality is made of layers, planes of existence vibrating at different frequencies. Most humans are locked into one, the dense physical plane. But the soul? The soul is not limited by gravity or flesh. It is naturally multidimensional. You weren't meant to remain bound to the material world. You were meant to remember your access to all of them. Dreams, visions, sudden downloads of clarity. These are not random. They are signs that your consciousness is brushing against other realms, and the more you cultivate awareness, the more easily you can move between these planes. This is what the ancient mystery schools were training initiates for, not just to understand the cosmos, but to navigate it. Thoth didn't teach escape, he taught mastery. To walk between worlds is not to leave one behind, but to weave them together, to live in the physical while channeling the divine, to speak in human language while carrying cosmic memory. He showed that the veil between dimensions is thin, thinner than we think. But it's not the world that must shift. It's you, your vibration, your clarity, your stillness. Only in silence can you hear the higher frequencies. Only in surrender can you step through the invisible doorways. And once you learn to do that, once you remember that the borders between worlds were built in your mind, everything changes. You begin to dream with intention. You begin to receive messages from beyond. You begin to act, speak, and live with the awareness that you are not confined. You are a traveler, a messenger, a soul with feet in both realities, like Thoth, because the ability to walk between worlds was never his alone. It was the inheritance he left for those bold enough to remember that this world is not the only one, and you were never meant to walk in just one direction. For all the scrolls, symbols, and secret teachings Thoth left behind, there's one truth that eclipses them all. The final key is you, not a relic, not a temple, not even the emerald tablets. You are the gate. This was Thoth's greatest revelation, one that the mystery schools protected and the power structures feared. That beneath all the veils of illusion, beyond the stories of gods and heavens, there is a divine force waiting to be unlocked. And it doesn't live in the sky, it lives within you. You are not just a seeker of truth, you are the source. You are not just reading the script, you are writing it. You are not a drop in the ocean, you are the entire ocean, aware of itself for a brief, beautiful moment in time. Thoth never wanted to be worshipped. He didn't come to build temples or command rituals. He came to plant a message so powerful it would echo across lifetimes, that you have always been divine. But the key can't be handed to you. You must claim it. It doesn't unlock with belief. It unlocks with awareness, with courage, with the willingness to unlearn everything you've been taught about who you are. Because when you strip away the programming, the fear, the roles you were told to play, what remains is not emptiness. What remains is power. Pure, sacred, infinite power. The kind that creates worlds. The kind that heals timelines. The kind that makes you dangerous to those who profit from your forgetfulness. And that is why the teachings were hidden, not because they were false, but because they were true. Because once you find that key within, you don't just awaken, you begin to activate. You remember why you came here. You remember that the journey was never about escape, but about embodiment. To walk this world as a soul fully aware. To live as light wrapped in flesh. To be human and divine at the same time. This is the truth Thoth encoded in symbols, in myth, in silence. And the reason you're still reading is because part of you already knew that you've been carrying the key all along. You've walked through myth. You've stepped behind the veil. You've followed the path Thoth left for those ready to remember. And now, you've arrived at the most sacred point in the journey. Choice. Because everything Thoth ever taught about consciousness, vibration, time, death, and reality was never meant to be passively absorbed. It was meant to awaken something ancient in you, not to admire the truth, but to live it. This final chapter isn't about Thoth. It's about you. Now that you've seen behind the curtain, what will you do with what you've remembered? Will you return to the comfort of illusion, to the false safety of systems that ask you to obey, consume, forget? Or will you step fully into your own light and finally become the being you were born to be? Thoth's path was never about enlightenment as a destination. It was a process, a practice. It meant waking up every day and choosing to create rather than react, to observe your thoughts, to speak with intention, to move through the world as a soul aware of its power. And here's the truth most won't tell you. Awakening is not always easy, because once you see clearly, you can no longer pretend. You'll feel the weight of the world more deeply. You'll notice the illusions more painfully. But you'll also feel the pulse of divinity in your own hands. You'll know that you are not bound by fate. You are here to rewrite it. This is the great gift of Thoth, not as a myth, but as a mirror, a reflection of what's possible when a soul dares to remember. He didn't come to lead you. He came to show you that you are the leader. And now, with this knowledge in your heart, the question remains, what world will you create? Because the age of forgetting is ending. The time of awakening is here. And the next chapter is yours to write.